All right, I'm Don Baker, President and Publisher of the Puget Sound Business Journal, and I am going to be moderating our final session today. So I'm going to go ahead and invite our participants to come up and join me. Please welcome Amy Morrison of Lake Washington Institute of Technology. Please welcome Lalita Uppala of Indian American Community Services. Please welcome Goran Sparrman, Sound Transit. And please welcome Faith Pettis, Pacifica Law Group. All right, well, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. I am going to ask you all to kind of just start off by, if you would, just introduce yourself, a little bit about your role at your organization, and then tell us briefly about your organization itself. So I'm going to have, actually, Faith, would you like to start us off, share with us your role at your organization and a little bit about what your organization does?
Is this on?
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Faith Pettis. I'm a partner at Pacifica Law Group, which is a boutique sort of law firm in downtown Seattle. It's about 40 lawyers. I specialize in affordable housing finance. I'm what is known as a bond counsel, so assist governments when they're borrowing money for capital projects. My major work is in the affordable housing space, but I also do financing for higher education institutions and K-12.
All right. We'll just work our way down. Goran?
Is this on? Yes, it is. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're feeling awake for this next session. Rachel, I didn't see you there earlier. Anyway, I am the interim CEO of Sound Transit, and that's an organization that I don't know if it needs much introduction here, but as I get to my comments here later, you will understand why it should not need an introduction. We are in the process of building out a very large light rail and mass transit system in this region. I'd like to mention the dollar amounts, which are blows your mind. I'm in charge of a capital program that's in net present value is worth about $100 billion. So if that doesn't give you pause, I'm not sure you should be in this room. So I think I'll stop right there. I assume there's questions coming later.
Perfect, thank you. Lalita?
Is this on?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lalita Uppala. I go by she, her, Executive Director for Indian American Community Services. Indian American Community Services is a community-based organization that has served the members of the Indian American immigrant refugee community since 1984 in King County primarily, but in Western Washington. Thank you.
All right. Amy?
Good afternoon. I'm Amy Morrison. I'm the president of Lake Washington Institute of Technology, wrapping up 11 years as president of the college and wrapping up over a decade on the OneRedmond board. So thank you, Christina, and to members of the board for your leadership. It was a privilege to serve alongside you. I'm happy to share there is a lot going on at Lake Washington Tech these days, which I'll hopefully get to highlight this afternoon. Lake Washington Tech is one of our state's 5 technical colleges, part of our state's community and technical college system. We offer over 40 associate degrees, over 80 professional certificates, and 11 baccalaureate degrees. And we pride ourselves in partnering with you, business and industry, to make sure that we're graduating your future workforce. And I'm also excited just to share with you that we have 3 major construction projects happening on our own campus. So happy to talk about our college's direct economic impact as well today. Thank you for having me.
So let's stick with you for a minute here. So Lake Washington Tech was one of the first institutions impacted by COVID. Can you share with us a little bit about what that was? And how are things since then? Have students returned in person? What is the demographic mix compared to then? Share with us a little bit about that.
Can I talk about our construction projects first?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
That's part of the exciting things you all have going on. So share some of that.
We were the first college in the country impacted by COVID, with 18 of our first quarter nursing students involved in clinical education at Life Care Center of Kirkland. So our college has come a long way since being dubbed Campus Zero. And we're very proud. In fact, I have some colleagues here today. We're very proud of the progress that our college has made, particularly in three major areas on the construction infrastructure side I wanted to share. And then I have a picture to share as well. Thanks to Senator Patty Murray, I know Megan, her King County Director, is here. We were able to procure federal funding over $1.1 million to install the state's largest community and technical college solar array. So we're working right now with McKinstry to put that on our campus. Our campus, just so you know, is located in Totem Lake, North Rose Hill of Kirkland. But I just want to know, for Mayor Bernie's sake, we can see Redmond across the street. So in addition to our solar panels, we all learned the lesson of COVID that childcare is essential. And so we are replacing our well-loved 25-year-old portables to build a new early learning center. Thanks in large part to Congresswoman Del Bene, the State Department of Congress, King County Councilwoman Claudia Balducci, and our foundation. So we're very excited to break ground later this year on our new child care center. And then most excitingly, we are breaking ground. Here's some of you who might need some photographic relief here from all of the numbers today. This is our newest instructional building that has been built, funded by the state of Washington in over a decade, our Center for Design. It will be at the front of our campus, over 50,000 square foot, two-story facility to showcase our most creative and technically proficient students in gaming, architecture, art illustration, etc. So we're very excited about that. Most excitedly, we're having a 500 seat multi-purpose space, which we'll look forward to partnering with many of you in the community to offer events there. This is another viewpoint. All told, those three projects will bring over $45 million of construction funds to the east side in the next couple of years. So we're very excited about that. So in sum, you could say this college has come a long way in the past decade and certainly during the pandemic alone. I will just say two quick highlights. We're very proud that our students have returned in full force since prior to the pandemic across the board, and especially in our English language learning programs. We're very excited about the gains that we've seen, especially from the increase of the East Side refugee immigrant increase in population. So we're very proud to serve our entire community. And I don't have to tell you all this in sitting here at Microsoft that hybrid, flexible learning is here to stay. If you would have told me as a technical college president that we'd go all online in 2 weeks for an entire quarter, I would have said you're crazy. But that's exactly what we did in March of 2020. And then we reopened in June of 2020. We've been partially and fully opened ever since. So thank you for allowing me to share those exciting highlights of how far we've come since 2020.
Absolutely. Lalita, IACS has a long history in the region. And can you tell us a little bit about your expansion to supporting entrepreneurs and small business owners, along with what that was like during the pandemic particularly? I know you all have a holistic approach to this. Share with us a little bit about that.
So Don, IACS operates on a by and for community model, which many of our community organizations seated here today. I see many of my peers and colleagues here. Thank you for being here. From Together Center for Tomorrow, East Side for All, Africans on the East Side, GBSP, Narima Amin, Mohammed Bakar of MCNA. I see Japanese American Society, Dale, thank you for being here, and Centro Kuturo. Each of you sitting here, I can only speak with and for you. And I will say that because we work on a community ambassador model, our ambassadors were already entrenched in our communities by the time COVID hit. And for our small businesses, life was not so great to start with. And with COVID, it hit rock bottom. There was no revenue. It was difficult to figure out food on the table. Our cab drivers, our restaurant workers, our small businesses that were home-based businesses, our beauty salons. My small business team is seated at table 11. And I know that for us, work never stopped. We could not sleep because we would not sleep. And our community stepped up. We set up volunteer mentor models where every small business had volunteer mentors to assist them. We looked for ways, creative ways to innovate revenue generation. Our cab drivers started delivering food for our restaurant workers. We reached out to Amazon op centers to look for alternative ways to support revenue generation for their spouses. Our healthcare workers, our community ended up stitching at least 25,000 masks, I know, which were dropped off to healthcare workers, but also to our small businesses. There was no PPE. So many ways we had to reinvent who we were. And we just kicked off the small business support services at IACS that very year in 2020. It did not take us long because we're used to working hard. We're used to being creative and innovative. And it is our community who tells us how to do things better. But in that process, we got into providing small businesses. And you brought up something there, holistic small business support. For a small business family, reaching out to a grassroots organization for support is not, it is about receiving education on technical assistance, accessing relief opportunities, and understanding what compliance in the United States means. But it's also about seeking behavioral health support. It's also about their children because education is difficult for them. It's hard to find affordability to rent a place on East King County. It's also about the seniors who live with them as extended families and who end up being isolated. So reaching out to community-based organizations for providing that kind of holistic support that can be wraparound is what IACS and many of us seated in this room are about.
Great, thank you. John, let's go to you for a minute. Now, you mentioned earlier, you talked about some of the great things that you all have going on. One of the most exciting opportunities in terms of transportation here on the east side is the launch of Sound Transit's 2 line, and it's opening in Bellevue and Redmond stations at the end of April, I think it is. Share with us a little bit more about what's planned there, the impacts that are expected from that in terms of forecasted capacity. What are some of the commute times and just general overview of that?
So I'm happy to do that, and I'm going to brag about the Line 2 opening. And just one quick takeaway, it opens on April 27th. Please put that on your calendar. The main ribbon cutting station by City Hall in Bellevue at 10 a.m. There will then be celebrations at all the other stations as well. Before I proceed or to tell you everything else, I need to recognize one of my board members, Mayor Bernie. It's always good seeing you. You're probably spending way too much time with me these days, but it's good seeing you. So that's the Line 2 opening, and this is, as you all know, a significant milepost. EastLink has been discussed for years, literally, and we've now been under construction for a while. I will tell you that many of you are aware that the original Line 2 should have connected across Lake Washington. We do have continuing construction activities on the floating bridge and the approaches to the floating bridge, which delays the South Bellevue across into the International District in Seattle until probably fall 25. So it's a little bit year or so later. But that's why we refer to the Line 2 openings as the EastLink starter line opening. But we're not going to stop there. Later this year, probably late August, early September, we will be opening revenue service to Linwood. An additional 4 stations going north from Northgate all the way up to Linwood. Excuse me. And that's actually a very significant event in its own right. And then, of course, the next year, we then continue by opening service to downtown Redmond. And not long after that, we expect to open service to Federal Way. And then we have more lines coming, connecting down to Tacoma, the Tacoma Dome Link Extension Project, and eventually to Everett as well. This will all be done by, well, I can't ever remember the exact year, but late 2030s. So you heard my reference to the $100 billion net present value earlier. That's what that money buys you. A complete 50-plus mile link light rail system, in addition to the Sounder commuter rail program that's underway, in addition to our Strider BRT program. Many of those services will be opening next year as well, in addition to our Sound Transit Express bus system. So basically, we're building a massive public transit system for the central Puget Sound region. And frankly, it's pretty exciting to be part of that. Let me talk briefly about one of the other dimensions. When we do these investments, we are very aware that these are significant economic drivers. To date, we have built over 2,000 affordable housing units as part of our transit-oriented developments around our stations. Thank you. I'm actually quite proud of that. In addition to that, just on the Eastlink starter line, we have about 500 affordable units under development. So much more coming. And I can't conclude my comments without mentioning the Spring District in Bellevue. So the Spring District, at the time it was formed by the city of Bellevue, and yes, at the time I was the Bellevue Transportation Director. So this sounds like I'm bragging, and yes I am. Was the largest transit-oriented development in United States history, 930 acres. And we've all seen what's been happening there, and I think the market has slowed it down a little bit, but there's a lot more exciting things happening in the Spring District as well, directly triggered by the investment in Link Light Rail and the 2 stations that were deliberately placed to facilitate that TOD. So it's just an example of the major economic impact that these kind of massive investments have. In addition to, of course, all the tremendous social services that we provide by allowing people a good access to jobs, recreation, and just connecting the region together. And I'll stop right there.
All right, great. Well, that's a great segue in terms of affordable housing. So, Faith, when you look at an affordable housing project, they can be very complicated and often take quite a while to come together. Share with us a little bit about why that is.
Let me just start out by saying hearing about the region's investment in transit and the fact that we're almost there gives me a lot of hope for affordable housing, because it seems to be an intractable problem that takes so much money, and it appears that we are making so little progress. So I am very heartened to hear the report on Sound Transit. So to understand why it takes so long to develop affordable housing, you have to understand the funding sources for how housing is built. So left to its own devices, the market and developers will build to the highest rate of housing that they can build, right? Because it generates the most income, they can rent the highest amount to people, it can pay debt service easily. If you want affordability in projects, you've got to have some subsidy in the projects. And the workhorse of affordable housing subsidy is known as a federal low-income housing tax credit. It's a fabulous vehicle. It's been around for almost 40 years. It's created over 3 million units nationwide, over 100,000 units in Washington state alone. Without it, we would be lost. It's a very competitive resource. It's limited by per capita. It's oversubscribed every year, 3 and 4 times oversubscribed. So developers that want to build housing have to wait 2, 3, 4 cycles of funding in order to get their project eligible to get the tax credit and the tax exempt bonds that go with it. But even once they get that funding, it's not enough to build the housing and rent those units at those levels that we need to be able to provide them to people that can't afford market rents, right? So, and we're not talking about people that don't have jobs. We're talking about people that are actually out there working well above minimum wage that can't afford the rents. So you need a gap filler, and the gap fillers come from public sources. Housing Trust Fund, which the legislature funded this year in the biennium, it's over $500 million. That's amazing. That's a record for Washington State. There's also lots of local funds. You know, there are some cities and counties that have successfully passed housing levies. Kudos to them for doing that. There's sales and use tax dollars, there's lodging tax dollars, there's real estate excise tax. There's all of these different types of funding sources. Every one of them requires a different application, a different process. And many of these projects have stacked funding. So you will have 5 and 6 different funding sources that all have to line up perfectly in order to work. We are really lucky on the east side to have Microsoft leaning in with their $750 million affordable housing investment that has gone to a lot of projects. They set the standard and really brought other big companies into the game, including Amazon. So there's a lot going on in this area, but just the sheer amount of work you have to do to get all of those funding sources lined up in order to pull this off is what causes the delay.
So let's stick with you for a minute and continue. So there are also a lot of challenges that developers face, both in terms of once they get the project going, but then also once they start filling the housing. Can you share some examples and talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit?
Sure, and it's it used to be that these affordable housing projects, because they were renting at below market rents, would lease up instantly and would not have any vacancies. You'd be at 98% vacancy easily with no concessions. COVID hit, and the legislature appropriately took measures to protect tenants during COVID. And I'm a firm believer in the fact that all of our interventions in the affordable housing arena need to be around 3 different areas: support, stability, and supply. 3 different ways to approach affordable housing support. We went a little bit overboard in the stability area in tenant protections. And so what happened is the 3-day to pay or vacate a unit for delinquent rent went to 2 weeks and then went to a month. And then there was an eviction moratorium that went for 2 years. And during that time, tenants could not be evicted for any reason. And so landlords are having a really hard time evicting people that should be evicted for criminal behavior. And it's not just failure to pay rent, it's criminal behavior. It's things like starting fires in your unit, like breaking ceiling tiles and windows and doors. There was one story of someone who took out their bathtub in their 4th floor unit and continues to shower in that unit, ruining every apartment below them. That tenant cannot be evicted. And it's really tough because these people need supports and helps. And the question is, where would they go if they're evicted? But at the same time, it's having impacts, negative impacts on many of these apartment buildings, so that the vacancy rate is actually starting to increase among the low-income housing units. So I'm hearing stories about 20% of the residents are not paying rent in many of these buildings, which is just absolutely insupportable for affordable housing developers who don't have a 20% cushion in their budgets. So we're nearing the point where I think we're going to start seeing some defaults in this portfolio, which is a cause for worry, given that we've spent so much money, as I just said, investing in building these units. We need to take care of them now. So that is one thing I hope comes to light, is that we can start to look a little more balanced way at some of the tenant protections that have put into place, and allow landlords to address issues that really need to be addressed. And I should mention too, the other issue is that there are 3 hearing examiners in all of King County that handle every eviction case. And there's 2,000 eviction cases. So it's taking a year to process an eviction from start to finish.
Yeah. So Amy, let's move back to you. You mentioned childcare a little bit earlier, and I know that's a very important issue in a lot of areas. So, but you all have received more than $10 million in federal funds for all sorts of improvements in health and safety, including childcare. Can you share with us a little bit more about that?
I'd be happy to. We have the good fortune of having an early learning center on our campus. We also have an early childhood education 2-year degree and an applied bachelor's degree. In addition, a paraeducator degree. So we have been in the early childhood education business for quite some time. Our average age student on our campus is 29. Typically, our students have families, they're working part-time, and then coming to the college full or part-time. So childcare has been essential on our campus for many years and continues to be so. So as I said before, I'm just very grateful for our federal, state, county, and then local support to construct a new and expanded child care center. I also just want to note that our child care center serves our students and their children. It serves our employees and their children, and then also serves many members of the community and their children. Because we're able to build a new child care center, we will be able to expand the number of children served. And I'm really grateful to the city of Kirkland for stepping up to partner with us and Diana's here from the city was very helpful in putting together this partnership, which allows for the city of Kirkland to hold a few spaces for their employees, especially first responders, to be served on our campus. So we're very grateful for our partners with the city of Kirkland. And I think just going forward, we all know that for working families in our community, childcare is incredibly costly and scarce. I mean, that certainly is one of the impacts of the pandemic. So we're very grateful that we can not only serve the children on our campus, but certainly our children of our community as well.
And before we move on, if you would also share a little bit about some of your industry partnerships. You have some very strong industry partnerships here on the east side in healthcare and space. Talk about those for just a minute.
Sure. So our mission is preparing our students for a global workforce, and we do so in many different ways. One, all of our students graduate with all of our courses, our programs at the 2 and 4 year level have required diversity and social justice courses to prepare our students for a globalized workforce, and that's something that we take very seriously. All of our associate and bachelor's programs have industry advisory committees comprised of business leaders, just like all of you, who help our faculty prepare our students for today's demands. That could be internship opportunities, curriculum updates, trends in the global, in the workplace. And so a couple of highlights, Carrie is here from Amazon, has been an incredible supporter, and we were able to, with Amazon support, stand up a short-term certificate in aerospace assembly specialist to help launch, no pun intended, Project Kuiper's satellite technology in Kirkland. So we're very excited about that, and those classes will start this summer. So if you know anyone who wants to build satellites, let us know. Evergreen Health has been a longstanding partner. Many of our medical assisting registered nurses have gone to work at Evergreen. Do you want me to keep going?
Sure.
Okay. I don't want to hog the microphone here because there's a lot to talk about with workforce partnerships, but two other ones I wanted to highlight. Delta Dental Foundation invested over $800,000 in our dental hygiene and assisting programs by replacing the operatories in our clinics. And then we're working with regional school districts to launch our paraeducator program. So those are some of the new and exciting partnerships coming online at Lake Washington Tech. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Lalita, we often hear about the barriers entrepreneurs in underserved communities experience when trying to access programs and resources. Many of those programs at the federal, state, and local level are making attempts to address these gaps. But perhaps would you share with us a little bit about your work with the Washington State Department of Commerce's Small Business Resiliency Network and what you're trying to do to help in those areas?
Absolutely. So the State Department of Commerce's SBRN, or Small Business Resiliency Network, is actually composed of 30 community-based organizations and 65 plus ancestral homelands that are represented in it. Some of our King County partners are a part of the SBRN. We have Centro Cultural Americano, we have Japanese American Society, the Cambodian American Council, we have IACS ourselves, and MAPS is a part of the SBRN network. And collectively, SBRN's intent is to bring the small business community's voice to the government. We are the liaisons there who connect our small businesses to decision-making tables, often knowing that there is a need for culturally relevant services that need to be provided, that it is the community who knows how to best serve the community. And with that intent, the SBRN network actually today is about those community organizations that are partners in that network that are making the decisions with commerce in how the funding gets distributed to small businesses, in terms of how those resources get sent out, what kind of technical assistance, what is technical assistance to a small business community? Is it about filling a piece of paper in an office, in a four-wall space? Or is it about stepping into a small business welcome center where you can access a meal for yourself and you can take home some food for your family? And then, by the way, you can also access training for yourself. You can figure out which financial accounting system is best for you as a small business. But oh, there's a small business, there's actually a community behavioral health provider sitting right there. Can I go back and bring my child here? Those are the conversations we are having with commerce today about the postmodern outlook in providing small business support services.
And before we move on, you're also a part of the Seattle Metro Chamber's Community Business Connector that was created with support from King County and the Port of Seattle. How's that program supporting small business owners in the region?
So the CBC program, as we call it, has about 23 or 25 different organizations that are part of 5 different hubs that have been divided across King County. IACS is a part of their South County hub, and we work with our small businesses in Kent, Federal Way, Tukwila, Maple Valley, Covington, but also there's another community organization based off of East Side, with OneEastside leadership and support, IWCC, that has been providing a lot of translation help. Again, CBC also is where we act as liaisons or supporters, the bridge builders between our small businesses to those decision-making tables, because it takes more than one leadership space to really provide holistic support for small businesses.
Great. Thank you. And so, Goran, I just want to, you had mentioned earlier the downtown Redmond extension somewhat that's under construction. Could you give us an update on that? And could you also give us more of an update on the Eastlink extension that's connecting the east side to Seattle? Can you go into a little more detail?
I'm happy to. So I'm happy to say that the construction that you see out from roughly here down into downtown Redmond is actually on schedule and doing really well. We actually have no issues at this point in time, and we expect the project to complete in 25, and we'll have another big ceremony in downtown Redmond opening that part of the system. So that's the good news. You did ask the tricky question about what's happening on I-90. So, and I don't know how much any of you have been following the board presentations and board discussions around I-90 and our Eastlink project over the last couple of years, but let me try to summarize. The entire line was supposed to be opened earlier this year, all the way from here into downtown Seattle. What we discovered was that some of the construction on the floating bridge and on the approaches to the floating bridge did not meet our quality standards. So after a long process of a lot of testing, it was determined that the only recourse was to frankly replace a lot of what's called plinths. Those are the concrete blocks upon which the rail rests. And that work is well underway. Last number I heard is that we are about 60% complete. The good news is that the contractor team, Kiewit Hoffman, agreed to do the work. Candidly, I'd be shocked if there isn't some kind of claim conversation that's coming at us. So I'm trying to be a little bit cautious here. I talk about this. But the reality is that we need those plinths to all be replaced, and then the whole system needs to be tested. Right now, we expect all that to be done by early fallish 25. And I hesitate to go into more precision around exact opening date because there's so much uncertainty in terms of what else we could find when those deficient plinths are removed and replaced. Hopefully, knock on wood, we'll be in good shape and we should be open to open the full EastLink project by fall, late 25. What you all need to know is that that has created a huge operational challenge for us. I already mentioned how we're opening to Linwood Link here in late August, early September. The problem was that to fully operate that system the way we had planned to, with 4-minute headways, we needed access to the east side maintenance facility, which is built, open, and functioning in Bellevue. The problem is right now we're shipping rail cars and trucks across the lake. Well, that's not a sustainable model to actually run train service. So what we are actually doing, and we have done a lot of, I think, very innovative planning for how do we open to Linwood Link and still maximize the amount of train capacity we can provide between opening date and when we get the east side maintenance facility accessible to the system. So to cut to the chase, and the board heard a presentation on this just in the last couple of weeks, we actually plan to store a bunch of trains on the main line and in the existing maintenance facility in the Soda area. We're sticking a train every place we can find an empty track. I am not kidding you. So as a consequence, we think we can hit 8-minute headways, and that's by being extremely innovative in terms of how we organize that service. The unfortunate thing is that we'll have one disadvantage, the normal cleanliness service and so forth that we pride ourselves on, because we are actually storing a lot more vehicles in the existing maintenance space than it's designed for. Emergency repairs will happen. If it's cosmetics, it may have to take a back seat at times. So that's the innovative model we're using, and I'm hoping for the best, but the one thing I can guarantee, and I've had this conversation with staff, and I think I made this comment at a board meeting, the one thing I'm willing to guarantee is that we're going to have surprises, and we need to be very flexible and be able to be ready to respond to those things when they happen, because they will happen.
And I'd like to follow up also on the transit-oriented development efforts that you had mentioned earlier as well. Share with us a little bit more about kind of the update on how those will help create more opportunities in terms of affordable housing and also for the workforce here on the east side.
Sure. First, a couple of sort of broad observations that ties directly in what Faith was describing, which is the economics of affordable housing are incredibly challenging, and she's entirely correct in everything she said. The one way Sound Transit helps with that, and this is a board decision going back a number of years, is that we buy a lot of property to put in our station to build the light rail lines and so forth and so forth. And sometimes we don't need all of that property. Often we don't, which means we have remnant parcels that have significant market value. Well, by policy, we don't gift it outright. We very heavily discount the value of that property in order to make the market economics for affordable housing actually work. So, for example, if we have a significant property, and actually, I was just reviewing a couple of TUD opportunities in Kent, where we now have a developer board to actually do, I think it's 150 units, if I remember correctly, of affordable housing. We have one more piece of property that's going to be a mix of affordable and market-based. And that's all based on our ability to, with board sanction, reduce the value of those properties as we release them back onto the market. Now, it's not always easy. We do have a challenge sometimes finding the appropriate development partner to produce that affordable housing. So we have a whole division inside the agency that works on these kind of issues. I think I answered your question.
Yes, perfect. So Faith, let's continue with the affordable housing conversation. And in terms of the overall situation in affordable housing, how does the east side compare to Seattle, the rest of the state, and even the rest of the country?
Yeah, and I just want to follow up on the conversation about TOD housing, because I have worked on a number of those surplus properties that have gone for affordable housing development. And I have to say they are some of the hardest deals I've ever done in my career. Not because of Sound Transit's involvement, but because they are in prime locations. They are expensive, really, really expensive to do. And so the funding sources are as long as it gets. They're pretty amazing, but they're wonderful. The east side is doing better than the Seattle side from my sources, my developer friends who are doing affordable housing right now. They are saying that while they're having to make concessions, and we heard a real estate presentation about this, while they're having to make concessions on the Seattle side, on the east side, they're seeing still pretty high occupancy rates without any concessions. So you're doing better. They also say that some of the tenant issues are not quite as bad on the east side as they are on the west side, but they are seeing them still. I have a feeling that you're going to be seeing more affordable housing development over here on the east side just because of some of the tougher Seattle regulations that are governing landlords and especially in affordable developments on what they can and can't do. So some of the developers are saying that they will be exiting the west side and moving more over here. There have been some really successful projects done recently, and I think there's been a reference to the Together Center, which we're very, very proud of. And I know there's a lot of residents of the Together Center here. That was done as a turnkey project by a private developer together with the Together Center and created, I think it was 280 units of affordable housing above a human resources, social services campus, which is just revolutionary. And we're all very proud of that project. There's another one opening very soon in Bellevue that's called the Polaris at Eastgate. I think they're starting to move tenants in this week, and that one they've told me is 95% pre-leased already, and they're going to be moving 150 families in starting this week, and then there'll be a second phase coming online soon. There's also another major project in Totem Lake that is underway, and that's 400 units, 440 units, in which Microsoft put in a construction loan to get that project up and running. It has a lot of other funding sources as well, but that one is going. So the Spring District is another one that we know is coming. It's on the list, and the borrower there is Bridge Housing, who will be the nonprofit developer of that housing. So there's a lot happening over here, and it's all really exciting, well-located, beautiful projects, things that you really as a community should be proud of.
Before we move on, I want to stick with you for another question around, share with us a little bit about some of the new sort of innovative opportunities and approaches that are being considered to address affordable housing challenges locally and even nationally.
Can I tell you what my dream is actually, is building off and what we've heard here from Sound Transit is not getting parcel by parcel surplus properties, but actually getting ahead of the game and buying up land in bigger pieces around light rail development. We have a once in a lifetime opportunity with these new what is it, phase 3 coming through with 62 new station areas, and I think 4 of them, 6 of them, 8 of them over here. It would be wonderful to develop what we want, where we want it, rather than going and buying parcels individually with different developers. So land banking is starting to become talked about around the nation and in our state legislature a lot. There's a lot of money going to early land banking, but we need to be conscious and thoughtful about land banking and do it in a way that is aggregated, where we can decide what goes where. That helps with displacement as well. If you can time when projects go in and who occupies them, you can address the displacement issues that happen with development. So that is one of the things that is being worked on at the legislature. There's been several bills that have come through on TOD housing, and I'm hoping to see more. I'm hoping to see some more thoughtful work on this. And I know there was a recent study out by the University of Washington on TOD housing as well. So lots going on in that area.
It sounds like Faith and I need to have a conversation.
Absolutely. Amy, I want to touch real quick on the workforce, just some key issues, always impacting businesses is, the workforce and various jobs that are going to be needed going forward. Can you share with us a little bit about what you are doing to try to prepare some of those new jobs for the future workforce?
Sure. So we work very closely with business and industry, as I mentioned, through our industry advisory committees. And many of our business partners come to us, as I mentioned, Amazon, certainly Evergreen Health has come to us through the years. And our school districts have come with a paraeducator crisis to really ask us to help them stand up certifications, programs to help really grow their workforce needs. And I will just say, I wanted to specifically thank Amazon and Microsoft for their support in the legislature in 2019. Together, they essentially taxed themselves as the tech sector in order to make critical investments into the community and technical colleges to prepare future workforces. So I just really want to thank Amazon and Microsoft for their leadership in developing the Workforce Education Investment Act that really was a game changer for our two-year colleges and continues to be so. So I will just say, too, we have, thank you, Lalita, for your leadership and for calling out so many of the community-based organizations in the room. Our college has a long and proud tradition of working side by side with our CBO partners to make sure that your partners, your clients, your customers are also being served at our community and technical colleges, also as critical partners in meeting workforce needs. Thank you.
Great. Lalita, I want to jump ahead. You had shared with us, you've been involved in some struggles with Seattle Police Department that I think, could you just share a little bit about that and what you're experiencing in terms of on the east side?
So I'll start on a positive note first. The rest is not fun. So I think it is about why would it be that the onus to develop relationships and nurture partnerships is always on the community's end? Why would it not be on both ends? Right? That's the question of the hour. So on the east side, we've had some amazing partnerships with the Bellevue, Redmond police departments. We have the police advisory councils on each city where there is intent to reach out and create those partnerships with the BIPOC communities, the immigrant refugee communities. It is important to have our voice at those tables so that when on a Friday afternoon, a neighbor complains in an apartment complex of an immigrant family and an immigrant father speaking loud to his son, and the cops get called and the father gets taken into detention, and that is only because of a culturally loud conversation. 2 days in detention for an immigrant family that has not even started their journey to reaching the American dream. What do you do? Who do you reach out to? These are real life situations that are happening in our communities. We have that opportunity when you have a relationship to reach out to that police department, ask what's happening, make that conversation go further and make that needle move just a little bit. On the other side of the lake, I would say we don't have that relationship right now. The fact that we took over a year to address an officer who put a value to a young student's life, regardless of which community they come from, because that kind of behavior, when it reaches, impacts any community member, whether they are the unhoused, they are our seniors, they are the most furthest from equity, our most vulnerable Black Indigenous community members, and whether they are from the Indian immigrant community. Putting a value to somebody's life and using dehumanizing verbiage around them should not take more than a year to figure out what to do with that officer. So I will be very clear that that has been an extremely gut-wrenching, frustrating journey for us, but that's not always the case. And that does not define every single law enforcement officer or agency either. It's about building relationships. It's about having capacity to build those kind of relationships. And it's about having some outstanding partners in this room to make that effort happen. So yes, it has been a difficult journey, but the work still goes on.
Thank you. Goran, would you give a sort of a high-level update on some of the background around the technical advisory group recommendations?
Yes, and I suspect we're sort of probably running short on time, so I'm going to try to be very concise.
Yes.
Yes, so the technical advisory group was formed about a year and a half ago, and it advised the Sound Transit Board on a number of recommendations for how to deal with some significant systemic performance issues inside the agency. And I was appointed the interim CEO only 2 months ago, so I'm brand new, so don't blame me for anything, guys. Kidding aside. It actually is interesting to me that my performance contract with the board, which for the first time in my career is actually publicly available, actually reflects all those so-called TAG recommendations. So that's my job. My primary job for the next year is to address and implement what the TAG recommended the Sound Transit as an agency needed to do. And there are 6 key recommendations. I'm not going to go through all of them. I will highlight a couple of them. One is to improve communications and decision making, both inside the agency and how we communicate with the outside world, especially our own board, where trust was a little bit short supply for a while. Hopefully, we're already making progress in that. Second one is to reform our capital program delivery system. And I'm happy to announce that we have just hired a new deputy CEO. I'm not at liberty to reveal the name yet, but hopefully this person will start in about a month, and this person will become my right-hand person, basically reforming how we design, plan, and build capital projects. This is the list of projects that's worth $100 billion. So you can appreciate that this is a really key issue, not only for me, but for the board. I think those are 2 key things I want to highlight in the interest of time.
Okay, great. And we are just about out of time. Faith, I did want to, was there anything that you wanted to share additionally in sort of affordable housing or any takeaway for people?
Just really fast, because we're well past our time, is, I think we have a lot to be proud of in Washington State. We've done a lot. We have consistently voted for pro-housing measures, and I hope people continue to do that and continue to support it, even though it sometimes looks like we're not making the kind of progress that we feel like we should be making. Partly it's because we're so successful, right? Is that we attract people here, and we need more housing at all levels in order for our system to work.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much. Please give a round of applause. I think we'll go ahead and end right there.
All right. Well, I know we are a little over time, so thank you all for staying. I want to go ahead and thank again all our speakers, our presenters for today. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank again Microsoft for hosting this event, Puget Sound Business Journal for our media sponsor, our supporting sponsors, Alaska Airlines, BizX, MoveRedmond, Port of Seattle, and Waste Management, and our staff and volunteers, especially Libby Fisher-Hunter from Microsoft and Sophia Mills from Compass and the Invention team for helping us out with the event. Thank you again for our economic development partners, our community-based organizations, because we got a lot of work still ahead of us, and I look forward to working with you. And again, thank you all for coming, and hope to see you all soon. Thank you.